I'm Eddie Fowlley, and principally I'm going to tell you about Lawrence of Arabia, I suppose, because that's why I'm here in this place. I was making a film of Lawrence of Arabia when I discovered this area for a location to build Aqaba, and I've stayed here ever since. I was on that film for 2.5 years. We started in Jordan. David always wants to do things where they should have been, where they happened, you know. And it was quite hard going in the deserts there. They weren't even on the map where we worked, you know. We saw them from a helicopter, and then we had to find them by truck and Land Rover. And I built those big camps, outer camp, and that was 3 miles across, incidentally, that big camp of Outer, with about 10,000 people living in it. They were Bedouin Arabs, which we gathered from all over the desert. And I ran it like a small town, actually, with a meeting every morning with the sheikhs to see what we needed. And then it got a little difficult in Jordan politically, and also it got a little difficult with Colombia, who was supplying the money. So they suggested we found a place where we could operate a bit cheaper, because there was a lot of us, and we were living out in the middle of the desert with big campsites which we built, and we were importing our food and by airplane from all over the place, and having a really good silver service every evening. Anyway, somebody said there's some deserts in the south of Spain which maybe you could use because it'd be cheaper, and there are technicians there. So we came here. Well, we didn't. They all got fired. Everybody was put off, except a few of us, very few. And I was one who was kept. And I packed up everything and put it all on a chartered ship out of the port of Aqaba, and came here to Almeria with that boat. I even brought some of the horses. The only thing I couldn't bring on board was a lot of dead camels that I had. The captain of the ship wouldn't allow them on. And it was a nice journey, actually. It took about 10 days to come up, and I enjoyed that. And we unloaded all in Almeria here, right on the side of the docks. And I was a bit worried, but the Guardia Civil said, no, you leave it there, it'll be perfectly all right. And it was. Meanwhile, I got into a car and drove around about. We're looking for film locations. And when I saw this place here, where we built Aqaba, I liked this piece of beach along here, and there was some little blue flowers growing on it, and I thought how lovely that is. And then I noticed across there, on the headland, there's a rock shaped like Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's lion's head. And I thought, that's an omen. And I believe in omens. Talking about omens, I must just tell you one. I was going out with one of the very first convoys on Lawrence of Arabia. I was leading my convoys to set up camp right out far into the desert. I'm not even sure, we may have been in Saudi Arabia. And we stopped overnight, all the trucks. And in the morning, as the sun was about to rise, I got my shortwave radio and walked away from the campsite a little bit, turned it on, to hear the news, the English news from the BBC. And I had it tuned in since the day before, and I had the volume turned up. from the day before, and I didn't realise. I switched it on, and as the sun rose over the edge of the desert, like that, I turned it on, and it blared out across the desert the music from the bridge over the River Kwai. Ba-bum, ba-ba-ba-ba. And I thought, well, my God, if that is not an omen, I don't know what is. We did that picture, took 2.5 years. We finished it we finished here in Spain, and then we went to Morocco to do the final scenes of where the Turkish army was killed. Because the king was interested in films. In any case, he lent him the army. He gave us his army to use. In fact, Sam did owe me a lot. I remember one time on Lawrence of Arabia, there was going to be a strike because the men wanted more money for living in tents. And I said, I employed you guys back in London, and you knew you were going to be living in tents, so you're not going to pull that one. And anybody who's not out there in the morning, when I blow the whistle at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, I expect everybody to get up in the trucks. Anybody who doesn't is fired and go back to London. And the next morning I blew the whistle, and that was that. We were all back to work. And Sam came up to me in the Philadelphia hotel in Amman some months later and put his arms around me. He said, "My boy, what you have done for my film." I said, "Just doing my job, Sam." He said, "I mean, you stopped the strike. You must always work for me." I didn't work for him again. So when we came here to this place, which is called Carboneras, it's in Almeria, on the southeast corner of Spain, which you can more or less say is the southeast corner of Europe. It's the best weather in Europe. And to find a place for the camels and horses to charge down to the beach, it had to be, of course, a bit of flat country. It has to be surrounded by barren hills. And there was going to be about 500 or 600 animals in that charge, you know. We brought 200 camels in from Morocco. And we gathered horses, about 400 of them, from all over Spain. And of course they all had to be fed and watered and housed and everything, built all that up in the back of the hills, back of the valley. And all the people to ride them. It's an enormous operation, really. We build the town. You see the town, and you know it's a big operation. But what goes on in the back is probably even bigger, you see. And so we flattened out all that riverbed. It's a dry riverbed, really. We flattened it out, took all the greenery out of it, removed any stones, and graded it flat, and built the town. It took quite a bit of time. And then when we finished it, we just said to anybody who wants it, they can have it. You know, we usually it's the cheapest way to do it. Actually, if you spend money taking it down, it's almost as much as putting it up. It took, I suppose, it took a couple of months or so to build, 3 months maybe to build it, and about 3 days to shoot it. But that's the way it is in movies. I did a film there called How I Won the War. Yeah. It's a ridiculously funny film. Yeah. But there again, I was doing the special effects in it, and there was a lot of interest. I've done a lot with Richard Lester, the director. I did the Three Musketiers and the Four Musketiers. And I did a bit of that down here in that same place as Aqaba. We'd finished the film, except we hadn't done the Battle of La Rochelle, because they didn't have anywhere to do it. They couldn't think of anywhere. And I came back here, and I thought, I know how to do the Battle of La Rochelle. When I read a script, I can immediately see the pictures. I can see the pictures in my head.
And where
I see the pictures, honestly.
Where have you got the pictures from?
I dream them.
You dream them?
Yeah. I will do research, of course. I'll do research.
So you're looking at photos?
all, I'll read a book.
Yeah.
I'll read it. If it's historic, I'll read the history of that particular time, so that I'm a bit authentic. But for the moods and things of the film, because mood is more important than anything really, you know. Create the mood, create the feel. I can look at a location and think it doesn't have the feel. It's not grey enough. It's too green. Anyway, I came back here with the outline of the story for Raj's Daughter, and I got into the Rolls Royce, and I drove all the way up the side of Spain. I thought, well, I look up the Atlantic coast of Spain and things first, just to be sure, and then I went to London to pick up some money from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and in a hotel I spread out a map, 2 or 3 maps on a bed. And I always think to myself, when I'm going to look for locations, I can pretty well build anything. But now and again, there's something that you've got to ask God to supply. In other words, it's got to be there. Nature. And on that particular script, I'd figured the most difficult thing was going to be to find a long, beautiful, empty beach. If you can get you know you've got a good picture if you've got a huge expanse of nothing with a tiny speck moving across it. You know you've got a, you know, if you could got a wonderful piece of flat sea out there and it's night silver from the sun backlighting it, and you've got a little tiny fishing boat out there and a man throwing a net. Tiny little thing in this great expanse. It's saying something, isn't it? It's saying, here's a little creature in the nothing, in the open universe, catching a fish. I dream. That's what I say. David used to say to me, you have an eye. It's a suggestion in the mind of the people in the audience. That's not a very good example of it, but all the time we do that. Or we do when we're doing David Lean kind of films. And people have never quite figured out why David Lean films are so successful. Yeah. And I can tell you right now, it's because of all the subtle suggestions which you don't know are there. But to write the script, and exactly as you might well know, the camera can give a lot of impact to things, and you've got to write it in there with the script. You've got to almost write the lens to get the best in, or the height of the camera from the floor, or looking down. You know, I don't have to tell you because you know what I mean about photography, but it's an important part, to me, it's an important part of the script. Then again, nowadays, you get almost just a synopsis of the story. You get a synopsis. I like a film script that tells every tiny detail. And David's scripts are like that. David will take a year, 2 years to write a script. If there's something not quite right on the page, you throw the whole page away and do the whole page again. Won't correct it on the page. It's not tidy. It's not perfect. Yeah. There was a man who only wanted perfection. That's all he wanted, perfection. If you gave him perfection, you were all right.
Yeah. Is he similar to Lawrence? Has he something to do with him? Is it the same character, David Lean?
With Lawrence?
Yeah.
You might. Yes, you might say that. Yeah, I think you might say that. David was a very difficult man to understand. You didn't know he was soft on the inside and tough on the outside, or the other way round. Soft on the outside and tough on the inside. You could never quite make out. But then people were, too many people were in awe of him. you know, which I fortunately, we were like brothers. So, understood one another. I understood what he was trying to do. And he came from not too much of a dissimilar background to me, you see. Not a rich family. I came from a very work. I started work when I was 13 years old. I started work in a factory when I was 13 years old. And I actually started work while I was at school at 11 years old in a bakery. You know, and you were lucky if you earned 2 shillings and 6pence a week. I've said this many times, it's been a good life. Mm-hmm. It's been an adventurous life and an unusual life, and I've been very lucky. Okay. So now I'm getting ready to move on.